Warm greetings from the high 10. It's Everyday Shenanigans. Thanks for joining me. I hope you all had a wonderful and prosperous weekend, relaxed weekend. This is the start of a new week, new month. Happy May to everybody. There has been an uptick of crime in America, especially Houston, Texas. Uptick of women missing, as Mr. Quanell X has made that apparent in his conversations to the general public. He's an activist in that area. As most of you know, Felicia Johnson from San Diego, California, she's still missing from Texas. She ventured from California a few weeks ago to seek out work in the dance industry. And there's naturally different rumors pertaining to what has happened to her out there. She's still currently missing. Her father, Mr. Kevin Johnson, is now in Texas, staying on to try to locate his daughter. I also posted a GoFundMe to my community board and in my video pertaining to Ms. Johnson, if you would like to donate any money to aid the father while he stays in Texas trying to find his child. I want to say this out of respect for Miss Johnson missing and to Mr. Kevin Johnson, if you're listening. I spoke with him for about a few seconds rather, this morning. And I'm gonna say this without him even knowing I'm gonna say this, but I think the public should hear what he has to say. And I'm sure he wouldn't mind repeating everything I'm going to say to the public. He did not want to do an interview with me because he doesn't like what is being said about his child. He doesn't like the rumors that are floating around about his daughter. And I understand that because that's the point. He is her father. And that's the thing some of us don't get when we discuss certain things and pass rumors about people, is that they do have parents, brothers, sisters, children. And when you pass those rumors about people, not knowing if they're true or not, it can be offensive, especially if the rumor has not been verified. He is not content with what is going on social media pertaining to his daughter and YouTube especially, and he feels like this is not the appropriate platform to discuss his child's disappearance or for he to, let's say, engage in a direct dialogue between a YouTuber and the general public and himself. So I respect that, and that was basically the end of our conversation. So let me say this before I go on to my current story. We are all human, and we will all, some of us, what is the word I'm looking for? Assume we know what happens to a person when they go missing. But in the end, we do not. We do not know Felicia Johnson or what the story I'm going to discuss here in a minute. We don't know these people. We don't know anything about them. The only thing you have is what the media portrays of the said person, whomever the media talks to, any information the media has gathered, and anything a person wants to put out to the public via social media. But in the end, as I've always told you all, even if the information comes from a news source, it is still somebody else's version pertaining to themselves or the said person. So you have to be careful in spreading things that are not true about people. You can say, yes, I heard this, but I don't have any information. That is true. Even if you word it that way as subtly as you can, other people still can become offended by the said information once you repeat the rumor. So that's my message, is that don't spread anything that you do not know is true or factual, or say for sure you know that happened or this happened when you don't. And as I said, even if you repeat the rumor, whether you're trying to mean harm or not, there still will be people who will get offended by the said information. And that's all I have to say on that subject. My news story today is pertaining to a young lady, Caucasian female, out of, once again, the Houston, Texas area. She was reported missing last year. She was living with an African-American male, ex-NFL football player. He's had some run-ins with the law, which led him to be incarcerated, and also possible suspect to the disappearance of this woman. It has come to my attention as of this past weekend that the remains that were found in December of 21 have been positively identified as Taylor Pomaski. I will play you different audios pertaining to this storyline of her disappearance, her connection to the boyfriend, Mr. Ware, his criminal background of being in trouble with weapons, drugs, whatsoever, how he came to be incarcerated, and what is his connection to the disappearance of her at the time and up until now that her remains have been positively identified. I will bring you all that said information. Prayers to Pomaski's family, and once again, prayers to Mr. Kevin Johnson and his family of San Diego, California, and those who are related to them in Houston, Texas area. As I said, there's an uptick of crime pertaining to women in that area. I've gotten information via the news that this is a heavily human trafficked area. And I don't know what's going on with many of the women who have gone missing, but I can't say verbatim if it's human trafficking or domestic or just bad dates or just some sick people out here wanting to play funny games. But nonetheless, it's a travesty because, as I have said about many women, especially Black women, we are already undervalued as it is as citizens here in the United States. There is no respect for us as citizens, Black women, and it is sad and atrocious. Now we'll play my story pertaining to Taylor. As I said, remains have been identified positively of a Spring, Texas woman by the name of Taylor Pomaski, Caucasian female. And I'd like to know what is the connection between the ex-boyfriend, boyfriend, or whatever he was at the time they were dating. Or let me say boyfriend, excuse me. It is alleged they were living together. Is he connected to her? What will the autopsy say pertaining to Miss Taylor? Thank you for joining me. This is Everyday Shenanigans.
Found in North Harris County are those of 29-year-old Taylor Pomaski. That is according to the Harris County Medical Examiner's Office. Now, Pomaski disappeared from her home in April of 2021. The remains were found in December. The case against her boyfriend, former NHL and NFL player Kevin Ware Jr., remains, quote, open and active, but he has not yet been arrested or charged.
Okay, everybody, that's said information coming out of Texas pertaining to Taylor Pomaski. Let me read you the said information, and I will play you audio pertaining to what started out as a disappearance and now remains recovered in December. Fast forward now, April, May, January, February, March, April, May, now coming up into month 5. Remains found positively identified as missing Spring woman Taylor Pomaski. This is by KHOU 11 News. Remains found late last year have been positively identified as a Spring woman who had been missing since April of last year. Taylor Pomaski, 29, was reported missing by family members on April 27th, 2021. Investigators at the time called her disappearance suspicious. The remains were located by Texas EquiSearch in North Harris County in December, and on Friday, the Harris County Sheriff's Office confirmed it was her. At the time of her disappearance, Pomaski was dating former NFL player Kevin Ware. The Harris County Sheriff's Office says the investigation into Ware remains open and active. He has not been charged in connection to her death. Ware, who was a former NFL player, was in a relationship with Pomaski. Pomaski's family tells us that they are devastated by the news, but grateful to investigators for bringing her home. That is the said information. I believe there's another news clip here, and this is pertaining to foul play in the pertaining to Miss Taylor. One moment, please.
29-year-old Taylor Pomaski, the young woman from Spring, has been missing for weeks. David Gonzalez spoke with a friend of Taylor's who says he last heard from her back in April.
There is one other bit of news then.
There's no doubt Taylor Pomaski loves her family.
You want me to? We're moving back.
This is video of her from a few years ago getting emotional after finding out her parents were moving back to Texas. Taylor's parents didn't want to go on camera, but they're frantic looking for answers as to what happened to their daughter.
Taylor's a great, bubbly woman, and her parents and family friends miss her a bunch.
Taylor's ex-boyfriend and friend, Eric Zuliger, says the 29-year-old had been living in a home in the 4500 block of Stallion Brooks Lane in Spring for the last year.
Taylor reached out to me many times throughout the month of April in various emails needing help.
Zuliger says he thinks Taylor was involved in a toxic and abusive relationship.
We were talking about her getting out of there, getting back on her feet, getting herself set and stabilized.
Right now, Harris County Sheriff's Office homicide investigators believe Taylor disappeared under very suspicious circumstances and may be the victim of foul play.
One of the last communications she's known to have was an email she sent to me on April 26th asking to talk at 6:55 in the morning. When I answered her at 9 o'clock, I said okay, and never heard back from her again.
Investigators have not named any persons of interest in Taylor's disappearance. They're asking anyone with any information on her whereabouts to come forward. Her family and friends just want to bring her home. In Houston, David Gonzalez, KHOU 11 News.
All right, everybody, that is older information pertaining to Taylor Pomaski. Let me make that clear during this live. This woman is now being perceived as deceased. Remains were discovered in December, buried. They have now been confirmed as of Friday, before the weekend, to belong to Taylor Pomaski. I will finish my information pertaining to her disappearance and now her death. Thank you all so much for joining me. KHOU is the source I just brought to you, identifying Miss Taylor as being now deceased. I'm going to bring you information by sportskita.com pertaining to Mr. Ware, an African-American male who was dating her and living with her at the time in the said home. He is currently incarcerated on weapons charges, I believe violation of probation and weapons charges. And I'm going to take you back in time pertaining to Taylor and Mr. Ware's relationship, his criminal background, how he became to be incarcerated last year, her disappearance, and now her remains being confirmed as of Friday. She is deceased. For those coming in the chat, do not understand this information. Sportskita is the second source I'm going to bring to you. Remains of woman ID'd in Texas pinned down as ex-NFL player Kevin Ware's missing girlfriend in a shocking discovery related to the Kevin Ware case. The remains found during a Houston area search in December have been identified as those of Taylor Pomaski. Pomaski was the missing girlfriend of former NFL player, authorities said, as per a report by NBC News. The Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences were the ones who made the discovery, according to an email from a senior deputy. This is said information. Mr. Pomaski's boyfriend at the time, Kevin Ware Jr., African-American male. She is Caucasian, in case you need to know. She's also 29 years of age. He was a tight end for the San Francisco 49ers. He was questioned about Taylor's disappearance in June 2021. The woman, age 29, was last seen last year on April 25th at a house party. So you now see we have differences of dates. One article, the first one I just read you by KHOU, says the 27th, if I'm not mistaken, 26, 27. This one is now saying the 25th at a house party. She had a party where she was the hostess at her home with some friends. So I don't know the exact date, but the person that just spoke in this audio said they spoke to her on the 26th in the morning. I believe that was her father. Pomaski was the host and had invited close friends over to her home in Spring, Texas. Officials had back then described her disappearance as suspicious. Pomaski's remains were ultimately dug out on December 10th. The remains were found at a site in North Harris County. The former NFL player was questioned in regards to the matter back in June last year. Ware is currently serving a sentence without bail for allegedly violating conditions of bond for a case involving drug and weapons. These charges, though, are unrelated to the disappearance of Pomaski. So, give you a brief synopsis of who Kevin Ware is. He's a former NFL player who played 16 games in the league. The player primarily played as tight end for the Washington Commanders and San Francisco 49ers in 2004. Prior to his short-lived NFL career, he played football for the University of Washington. The tight end unfortunately had multiple run-ins with the law. In 2010, which would have been 6 years after playing for the 49ers, he was arrested for evading arrest in Houston, Texas. He was accused of assaulting a valet at a bar he had visited and was charged with escape and theft. Now, I'm curious about what the theft is. He has been held at Harris County Jail on a combined $10,000 bond. I'm going to go ahead and play you information to that also that's in this commentary by Sportskeeda. So far, he has not been named as a suspect in Pomaski's disappearance, but the discovery of Pomaski's remains has now once again blown the case wide open. Harris County Sheriff's Office Senior Deputy Thomas Gillen said, "The investigation is still open, active. Homicide investigators are diligent on bringing this case to a close. Now a homicide case, any involvement could potentially mean more jail time for the former 49ers tight end." So why did he not stay in the league long? 16 games. That's not a lot when you consider pro teams play usually once a week when football season starts. So you're talking about at least 4 games a month where a pro team is playing. Well, you multiply 4 times 4, that gives you 16. So you're only talking about a man playing for 4 months in the NFL. What happened to Kevin Ware Jr.? Mr. Jr., what happened to you? Why did you have such a short stint in the NFL? I'm very curious. He has not been named a suspect in the disappearance and now remains found of Miss Pomaski. But they were living together, last seen at a party. She hosted a party. So what happened to her? 2, who reported her missing? Who last spoke to her? Who last saw her? Did Mr. Ware harm Miss Pomaski? Did they have a fight, argument? We'll bring you more commentary pertaining to what is believed to possibly be foul play. It now remains being found. Common sense will tell you that the decedent didn't bury herself. So that means somebody put her there. Whether it was an accident on purpose, whichsoever, most people don't crawl into graves and bury themselves. Stay woke. Sportskeeda is the source of that said information. Okay, trying to bring you everything I know about this case so far. As I told you about KHOU, her body has been discovered, positively identified on Friday. Sportskeeda gives you information pertaining to Mr. Ware and he and she dating. NYPost.com is my third source. Thank you for joining me. If you'd like to donate to the channel, $Beganji129 Cash App. Also, super chat to welcome during this live. Thank you, everyone, for visiting. All mods and visitors, new subscribers. Thank you so much. The former NFL player whose girlfriend vanished under some mysterious circumstances from a house party in Texas has been named as a suspect in her murder, prosecutors said. This article I'm reading to you is dated June 23rd, 2021. Kevin Ware, 40, a former tight end for the San Francisco 49ers, was identified as a suspect for the first time during a bond hearing Wednesday in Montgomery County on charges unrelated to the disappearance of his girlfriend, Taylor Pomaski, 29, news station KPRC reported. Prosecutors said Ware is suspected of murdering Pomaski and one of several people being questioned by authorities in the investigation, KHOU reported. No charges have been filed against him in the case, but he was one of the last people to interact with Pomaski before she went missing from a party April 25th at a home that she shared with him in spring. And this is in Texas, for those of you who are not familiar with the story. Tim Miller, the founder of the nonprofit missing person search group Texas EquiSearch, said that during the party, a fight broke out with Ware and Taylor, and from what we understand, the fight got fairly violent. This is in no way going to have a happy ending, Miller told the outlet. Authorities haven't said whether her remains have been found, but they previously suggested she may be a victim of foul play. So the commentary I'm reading to you now is a year old because we're now coming into the month of May. This was reported last April 2021. At that time of this article being published, Mr. Ware was deemed a suspect in the disappearance of his girlfriend. Her body was found in December of 2021, many months later. Now, as of Friday, she has been positively identified as the person found in the grave. But yet, this male is still incarcerated on other charges unrelated to her disappearance. It has not been named an official suspect or arrested in the death of Miss Pomaski. Thank you so much for joining me. As I said, at the time, they did believe her disappearance was foul play. Ware was arrested earlier this month after he allegedly failed to report for bond supervision in connection with previous gun and drug charges in a separate case. His lawyer said they weren't aware until the hearing Wednesday that he was a suspect in Pomaski's disappearance. That's the first time we've seen that, attorney Kobe Dubose told KPRC. That filing is the first time that it's been suggested that he is a suspect. Dubose said Ware has been cooperating with authorities in the investigation. He's told the police everything that he knows, and he's led them through his house. He's let them in his home, and that's really all we're going to say about that, Dubose said. This information was reported last year by the New York Post, June 23rd, 2021. So she went missing April 25th, 26th, never seen again, heard from. Remains were found in December, and as of Friday of this year, she has been confirmed dead. Did Kevin Ware kill Taylor? What is his connection to her disappearance, now being found dead, buried, confirmed now as of Friday? Thank you for joining me. Bringing you all information pertaining to this story, which started last year. My next source of information is yourconroadnews.com. Thank you so much for joining me. This is updated June 12th, 2021. This is by the Courier of Montgomery County. If you need verification for the story. Ex-NFL player from Spring arrested on bond violations. Girlfriend remains missing. Remember, this is at older content. A former professional football player was taken into custody Friday in Montgomery County on drug and firearms-related charges, as media reports signal him as a person of interest in the disappearance of a woman. Kevin Ware Jr., who played tight end on the San Francisco 49ers in 2003 and the Washington NFL team in 2004, was arrested for a bond violation from an arrest in April, court documents show. Ware, 40-year-old Spring resident, was in possession of drugs twice during his bond in late April and in May, and did not appear for supervision during either month, according to an order for arrest filed Wednesday in the 221st District Court. According to reports from KTRK ABC 13, Ware has been named a person of interest in the Harris County Sheriff's Office. She is described as standing 5'2" tall, weighing 110, with blonde hair, blue eyes. Pomaski is said to have a mole over her left eye and sports a navel ring, according to the sheriff's office. Ware was sent to prison for 2 years for an intent to manufacture or deliver a controlled substance conviction in December 2018. Ware is facing the same charge again, along with unlawful possession of a firearm by a felon, according to court records. Ware posted a $23,000 bond a day after his April 19th arrest, according to court records. ABC 13 reported friends described a violent altercation between Ware and Pomaski days later. As of Friday evening, Ware had no defense attorney listed in court documents. When reached by phone on Friday, Ware's lawyer, 2018 case, said he was not at liberty to discuss his former client's conviction. That is said information coming out of the Courier News. So Mr. Ware, who was 40 years old at the time this article was published, was in possession of drugs twice during his bond in late April and in May, and did not appear for supervision during either month. Let's see what else. And at that time, his girlfriend, a Caucasian woman, standing 5'2", 110 pounds, Miss Taylor, was missing at the time. He also has done time for 2 years for intent to manufacture or deliver a controlled substance. This conviction was in December 2018. Currently, he is facing the same charge again, along with unlawful possession of a firearm by a felon, according to court documents. That time, he posted a $23,000 bond on his April 19th arrest. Let me say this. He obviously is a troubled person. He is like a lot of people who decide they do not want to work or go to school or find a new hobby. He decided to go, I guess, in the drug business. I do not know if he is a user or was a current user at the time of his arrest, but he obviously has a problem with anger as well, because I brought you commentary earlier that he hit a valet. So, or had an altercation with a valet. So, who is Mr. Ware? Why did he have a short stint in the NFL? Is it because a team didn't want him, or is it because he was causing trouble, getting into trouble, and they decided not to hire him, the NFL, any pro teams? Did he kill Miss Taylor? They were living together, dating. Friends are verifying an altercation between the two. So did they fight at this party? How many people were there at the party? How many people saw these two fight, argue? That's said commentary. Thank you for joining me. Thank you so much. All right. Bringing you everything pertaining to this story, because this is an older story that has now been confirmed as a decedent. When you see pictures of Mr. Ware, he's a big, burly black man. I think I've only read one commentary where he was actually smiling, which is very, very scary. Very, very scary. I'm now going to play you audio pertaining to this storyline. Thank you all so much for joining me. Yes, God rest her soul. It's a very terrible situation here. Texas has too much going on. Way too much. And prayers for the Judd family. As most of you know, Miss Naomi Judd. Hold on one second. Make sure I get all this correct. Passed away. Hold on. I'm trying to find my stories. I can't find all my information. I'm going to play you commentary from last year. This is from 10 months ago. KHOU is the source. Thank you all for joining me.
Also, what happened to 29-year-old Taylor Pomaski? The young woman from Spring has been missing for weeks. David Gonzalez spoke with a friend of Taylor's who says he last heard from her back in April.
So there is one other bit of news then.
There's no doubt Taylor Pomaski loves her family.
You won't need to. We're moving back.
This is video of her from a few years ago getting emotional after finding out her parents were moving back to Texas. Taylor's parents didn't want to go on camera, but they're frantic looking for answers as to what happened to their daughter.
Taylor's a great, bubbly woman, and her parents and family friends miss her a bunch.
Taylor's ex-boyfriend and friend, Eric Zuliger, says the 29-year-old had been living in a home in the 4500 block of Stallion Brooks Lane in Spring for the last year.
Taylor reached out to me many times throughout the month of April and various emails needing help.
Zuliger says he thinks Taylor was involved in a toxic and abusive relationship.
We were talking about her getting out of there, getting back on her feet, getting herself set and stabilized.
Right now, Harris County Sheriff's Office homicide investigators believe Taylor disappeared under very suspicious circumstances and may be the victim of foul play.
One of the last communications she's known to have was an email she sent to me on April 26th asking to talk at 6:55 in the morning. When I answered her at 9 o'clock, I said okay, and never heard back from her again.
Investigators have not named any persons of interest in Taylor's disappearance. They're asking anyone with any information on her whereabouts to come forward. Her family and friends just want to bring her home. In Houston, David Gonzalez, KHOU 11 News.
All right, that's older content pertaining to Miss Taylor. This is a Caucasian male speaking. I don't know why I thought that was her father, but he was a little older. He's dated her at one time and last talked to her right before her disappearance. And he's alleging that their conversation is that she was trying to leave the relationship. He believed it was a violent relationship. And she was trying to leave to get on her feet. But unfortunately, she was not able to leave. So what happened at that party? Is that actually the last time Taylor Pomaski was seen alive? Was at a party she threw at her home that she shared with Mr. Ware. Very sad information. Because now she's been identified as deceased. Okay, that's my audio by KHOU 11. This is pertaining to the remains found in December of 2021 when she had not yet been identified as the person. Thank you all so much for joining me.
29-year-old Taylor Pomaski has been missing since April. KPRC2's Michael Lepardi live at the Harris County Sheriff's Office with new developments on the search. Michael.
Keith, the sheriff says the Institute of Forensic Sciences will work to identify those remains. And today, the director of EquiSearch spoke a little bit about their role in the search. The Harris County Sheriff says investigators found human remains during the investigation into the disappearance of 29-year-old Taylor Pomaski. At this time, Sheriff Ed Gonzalez says investigators are unclear on the identity of the remains, but believe them to be related to her case.
We have to wait till they're positively ID'd. But from all the information and things that led us there, we're extremely optimistic it's going to be Taylor.
EquiSearch Director Tim Miller says he got a call from a detective a few days earlier.
We was kind of on a standby deal for 2 days, and then the night before last, they called me and said, let's get your people out there.
The sheriff's office says Pomaski was last seen in April, and then in June, investigators said they believe she disappeared under suspicious circumstances. Volunteers searched earlier this year. Gonzalez says the remains were located in North Harris County, but didn't give the exact spot or go into detail about what led investigators there.
We were on standby very close to that property when the sheriff's department went in, knocked on the door, executed the search warrant, and told them that we were coming in.
The sheriff is encouraging anyone with information on Taylor's disappearance to come forward, saying the investigation is still ongoing. No word on how long the identification process will take. Back in June, the sheriff's office told us Taylor's boyfriend was one of several people they were questioning who interacted with her before her disappearance. And we asked today for an update on that and if that has changed, but we have not heard back yet. Reporting live outside of the sheriff's office downtown, Michael Lepardi, KPRC 2 News.
All right, everybody. Let's click to news out of Houston, Texas. So Mr. Ware cooperated last year with authorities. So exactly what was found in the house? Was there any evidentiary material leading to the suspicion of foul play by Mr. Ware in the house? What was taken out of the house? Was anything taken out of the house last year? Why is this man, grown man, getting in trouble with the law, having run-ins with the law with drugs and weapon charges, not conforming to probation? He knows better. Too old not to be conforming and falling through with what he's supposed to do. Why is he selling drugs? Was he selling drugs? Why would you be doing that at this age? You're too old for that. Why not do something else in the sports arena? What was your degree in college? You have to ask all those questions. Did they fight on the 25th, 26th, the day of the party? Who are the eyewitnesses that saw the altercation? Who was the last person that spoke to her? This one man whose audio I've played, you said he spoke to her. She was trying to get out the relationship and get on her feet. So why did she just leave? It is alleged that her parents were moving back to Texas at one time, a few years back when they, this video that was aired, I showed, I played. So were her parents living in Texas at the time of her disappearance last year? And why not go stay with them until you can get on your feet? Or did she ask him? Did she tell her parents, hey, I need to live with you? What was said between she and her family? Did she have any girlfriends that she could have stayed with? And then the ultimate question is always, if indeed it's a violent relationship, why stay? We hear that all the time. Why put up with foolishness? Because we all do. We all put up with some form of foolishness from others, be it verbal, mental, physical, financial. People use people. People manipulate people. What I'm coming to see at this late age of 51, it doesn't stop. Trust me, because you're older. All right, everybody. I brought you information by KHOU 11. Click 2, Houston, pertaining to her remains being found in December, and they did believe that they were her remains. What is the ultimate question? what took them so long to verify her remains? Because you're talking about from December up until last week, which would have been the month of April. So why did it take January, February, March, April, 4 months to verify her remains? Or is it perhaps they have a backlog of people to identify in the state of Texas? All right. I'm going to play you information pertaining to lawyers speaking of the bond hearing of Mr. Ware last year. Thank you for joining me. Hello, Joy. How are you, dear? Thank you all for joining me.
We have to ask you.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Common spelling.
And what's your role here at the DA's office?
So I'm the felony division chief.
All right. How do you feel about the judge's decision today?
I appreciate that she had a full hearing on the facts that were relevant to the bond decision, and she made the decision to hold him at no bond.
Why do you think he should be held with no bond, without?
Based on her finding, she has concerns for the safety of the community.
But why did you ask for it? You're the state. What are your concerns?
My concerns are the safety of the community, which is why we presented the testimony and the evidence that we did today.
How did you feel the hearing went?
Fine.
Why did you guys originally put in your court record that you believe he is a murder suspect in the disappearance of Taylor Pomaski?
I don't have any comment on that. We rely on information that we receive. We file information with the court, and at the time the motion was filed, that was information that we had.
Why did you make the decision today to not call the Harris County folks that were set to be witnesses today?
We did not subpoena any Harris County witnesses today, and I have no comment on that.
Where did you guys originally get that information?
No comment on that.
Alrighty.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Shut up.
Okay, sir. What is your name?
Eric Zuliger.
Spell your last name, Eric.
Zuleger.
And how are you related to?
I've known Taylor for 10 years, and we dated for 5, and we were friends for the whole 10 years.
And what is her full name?
Taylor Pomaski.
Spell the last name.
Pomaski.
Okay. Now, she ended up being associated with Ware here. When's the last time you heard from her that you know she was been heard from?
April 26th.
Okay, her birthday was just prior to April 4th. Okay, what, not like her to just vanish like that, just disappear and not a word from anything?
Like that, no.
What are you fearing on something like this?
I'm hoping that everything's going to turn out okay. She'll be fine. I don't feel that way, that I think something's happened. I know Kevin knows exactly what happened. She's missing because of Kevin or something Kevin's done, and she's staying missing because Kevin won't tell anyone what he's done. But Kevin Ware knows what happens to Taylor Pomaski.
What's your feeling on this? I mean, what's your gut feeling? That she's going to be okay, or what's your gut telling you?
I'm waiting for everything to come forward. There's always hope, and I'm not going to take that from anybody with what I feel.
Tell me a little about her.
Taylor she's just a wonderful person that I've watched videos and various things as we have gone through this, and just to see the sweet side of her come out it's hard to watch. And it's, those videos mean a lot to her family right now.
How'd she ever get tied up with Ware?
She was introduced to Kevin Ware by a girl 2020, I think spring of 2020.
And started dating then, or?
And started dating very shortly after, and things started changing quickly. Yes.
Just in what way? Her demeanor, or what?
She started getting more and more reserved. I think it was okay for a while, the first few months they were together. But after that, it started getting, it started being more frequent discussions about Kevin being gone. Kevin, then it progressed. Kevin's getting violent. Kevin's yelling. Kevin's doing this. Can't calm him down. Pick me up, help. So it went the whole gamut, and it started really accelerating in January.
Did you end up having to go get her several times, or?
She was brought to the house one time. I went to see her and get her one other time.
What kind of shape was she in then?
When I saw her the first time, she was in good shape. She looked good. I was very happy to see her in that kind of shape. 60 days later, when I saw her last, she did not look good.
And as far as what,
Just didn't look healthy. Looked like there was some. Definitely had not been exercising and doing the things she'd been doing previous and she would normally do. Out in the sun, that sort of thing.
I was down to talk to my doctor.
Ooh, sorry about that. Intermission. This is the ex-boyfriend speaking pertaining to her. It's very interesting information. The next information is clicked to Houston News. This is 10 months ago pertaining to Mr. Ware being arrested in his drug or violation probation charges. Bringing you everything pertaining to this storyline. Thank you for joining me. This is Everyday Shenanigans.
Whose girlfriend has been missing for more than a month has just been arrested.
Kevin Ware Jr. was wanted for bond violations, but detectives also plan to question him when it comes to the search of Taylor Pomaski.
Investigators with Harris County have called the woman's disappearance suspicious, saying that there may be some foul play involved.
KPRC 2's Mario Diaz live in Spring with new information in this case. Mario.
Investigators and loved ones, Andy, are desperate to try and bring Taylor home. Key answers can now be provided, hopefully, to investigators after what took place in this parking lot today. The arrest of Kevin Ware, who had been on the run for approximately 48 hours. Former NFL player Kevin Ware, back behind bars, captured by Deputy U.S. Marshals, part of the Gulf Coast Regional Violent Offenders Task Force, arrested on a warrant for failing to report for bond supervision in Montgomery County. But law enforcement officials say they want to ask him about the disappearance of 29-year-old Taylor Pomaski. Loved ones say she was last seen on April 26th at a party in Spring. Does the family view Kevin as the only person that has the real answers here?
There could be others that were around that house that night. I don't know that for certain. But Kevin knows exactly what happened.
Eric Zulliger is Pomaski's former boyfriend. He says Ware and Pomaski were in a relationship when she disappeared.
Taylor's still missing. We still need to find Taylor.
I'm on the phone with detectives on this case every day.
Tim Miller of Texas EquiSearch says he and his team have traveled as far as Henderson, Texas to search for Pomaski. His sole focus?
Let's just bring her home.
Yeah, that is the focus for the family as investigators try to find out exactly what happened. And Taylor, we can tell you that Ware right now is being held at the Montgomery County Jail. Live in Spring, Mario Diaz, KPRC2 investigates.
All right, so why did he go on the run? If he was living with this young lady, Taylor, in a home, why would he go on the run? He possibly went on the run because he knew he was wrong, and also the girl was missing, and he's behind the missing, and now we know she was found dead in, I believe, a grave. So therefore, somebody put her there. As I said, she didn't bury herself. So he hurt her, he harmed her, killed her, buried her, and then knew he hadn't been complying with his bond supervision, goes on the run. Well, where were you going to go? You're going to leave your home to go where exactly? When all you had to do was comply with the bond. Maybe he felt guilty. I'm going to go on the run because they already think I've done something to this woman. But you knew all that when you did whatever you did to her, if indeed you're behind at that time her disappearance, and now we know that she's dead. She's been confirmed as of Friday as the person that they found. Thank you, Mr. Miller, with the EquiSearch program for going there to look for her. And then later December, you all found the remains that were believed at that time to be a Miss Taylor, and now confirmed Friday that they are the remains. This man that you're hearing talking is Eric Zulliger. What I'd like to know is, why is the family not speaking up, perhaps publicly, pertaining to their daughter? Maybe they have spoken, and I just didn't see any commentary in the queue pertaining to their conversations. But I'd like to know why is the ex-boyfriend doing the most talking? Because so far I've played at least 2 or 3 commentaries with him giving his personal opinion and his rendering of his last conversation with Taylor before she went missing. And now we know death. Why is that? Is the family not wanting to speak publicly, or what is the issue? Why did she stay with him? Why did Taylor stay with Kevin? He says he noticed a change in her in January, right before her going missing. So that means only 3 months she was going downhill. One picture you will see her in commentary, she's looking very pale, I don't know if she was caught off guard with a picture of her or a selfie, but she doesn't look like the pictures where she's made up or her face painted. She looks totally different and looks a little more gaunt in the face. Face looks a little bit smaller than the other full pictures of her face, where she looks like she was a healthier weight. What was going on with her? Was it stress? Was it alcohol abuse? Was it drug abuse? What was it? Was he using drugs? Because you hear this man saying his attitude changed shortly after dating her. He was more violent. You couldn't calm him down. So is it possible that he had head injuries from playing football in college, short stint in the NFL? Did he have mental issues? Or was he just a violent person? Was he also beating this woman up shortly after meeting her in 2020? They only dated for a year. And as Mr. Eric says, it went downhill shortly after meeting him. So what you have to ask yourself is, why did she stay with him? What was so special about Mr. Kevin Ware Jr. that Taylor stayed in this relationship with him? And if indeed he killed her, why would he kill this woman? Thank you all for joining me. So click to Houston. I just played that information where he was arrested. And that was 10 months ago. Now I'm going to play you information where he was named suspect in her disappearance. Also 10 months ago by Click to Houston News. Thanks for joining me.
Case of Taylor Pomaski. She's been missing for nearly 2 months. She vanished after a party was thrown at her home in Spring.
Taylor's boyfriend was arrested just over a week ago, accused of violating bond conditions. And now Kevin Ware Jr., the former NFL player, is mentioned as a suspect in Taylor's disappearance in court records.
Our Michael Laparty is live now with the new information. So, Michael, what is Ware's attorney saying tonight?
Chris, Ware's defense attorney says that this was all news to him when he read it for the first time in that court document. Tonight, a new development in the legal case of former NFL player Kevin Ware. In a court filing, a Montgomery County prosecutor wrote that Ware is a suspect in a murder investigation relating to the disappearance of his girlfriend, Taylor Pomaski.
That's the first time we've seen that. That filing is the first time it's been suggested that he is a suspect.
Kobe DeBose is one of Ware's defense attorneys.
He's been cooperative. He's told the police everything that he knows, and he's led them through his house. He's let them in his home. And that's really all we're going to say about that.
The Harris County Sheriff's Office says Pomaski was last seen in April. Ware was arrested earlier this month, accused of violating bond conditions on previous controlled substance and firearm charges. The assistant DA's comments about Ware being a suspect connected to Pomaski were included in a motion asking that Ware's bail be increased or denied. Despite the court document, a spokesman for the Sheriff's Office would only say that Ware is one of several people that investigators are questioning who interacted with Pomaski before she disappeared. When we followed up with the Montgomery County DA's office, a spokesman said he had no comment.
Did Mr. Ware have anything to do with Taylor Pomaski's disappearance?
I'm not going to talk about that. Certainly, I don't think so. We don't know any facts that suggest that.
The court records show the defense attorney is now requesting copies of reports, statements, and other materials connected to the Pomaski investigation. The bond hearing for the other case, that is scheduled for next Tuesday. Reporting live in Conroe, Michael Laparty, KPRC 2 News.
All right, everybody, let's click to Houston News for verification of the said information. So I basically have taken you back in time a year ago to the arrest of Mr. Ware. Drug, weapons charges. He violated his bond supervision. He didn't comply with what he was supposed to comply with, which makes no sense. You know you're on probation, so why are you not complying or doing what you need to do? Then the woman was missing at the time, Miss Taylor, who he's dating. So that leads me to think that he has something to do with her disappearance, and now we know death, which was confirmed Friday, the remains that were found in December of 2021. EquiSearch was also involved in the search of this lady last year. We also have commentary from Eric Zuliger, who dated her at one time for 5 years, and says the relationship got violent shortly after her meeting him in 2020. She went downhill fast as of January of last year, 21. She did not look well. The next thing you know, not even 3 months later, the woman goes missing. People were at a party. They heard or saw an altercation between she and Mr. Ware. They were living together. So what happened between the two? It's very sick information because it seems like this goes on and on and on. But this woman was 29 years of age. Taylor Pomaski went missing last year. The former girlfriend of Mr. Kevin Ware Jr. And her remains have been positively identified as of Friday. And this is an open and active investigation. And they are diligent to bring a close, says authorities. And she went missing in Spring, Texas at her home. Remains were found December 10th in Harris County. Prosecutors identified Ware as a suspect in her disappearance during a bond hearing in an unrelated gun and drug case. No charges have been filed against Ware and Pomaski's disappearance. His attorney said at the time that, well, it moved too fast, this article I'm trying to read off of the New York Post. If you want to go to my community page, please go to it and it'll give you the said information pertaining to what happened last year up until now. But Mr. Ware is deemed a suspect. 51 minutes into this live for those who are just now coming in. And Reese, I do agree with you. This happens a lot with women and some men too, who are in domesticated situations. They don't feel maybe that the person is all that bad, or they know they're bad, but they somehow have a connection to the person. So they think possibly they can change them, their ways. But we have learned with people who are violent that you cannot change them, that they have to seek alternate help, mental help. And many people who are violent are also under other substances, such as drugs, narcotics, and alcohol abuse. So therefore, when you couple in those other situations, deities, there's no way you can help the person because they have substance issues and also anger issues. God forbid if they have other mental disorders such as bipolar, schizophrenic, there's nothing you can do. The sick part of the story is that she remained with him and she went missing. He went on the run due to this bond situation, which leads me to think he was guilty of hurting her. Because why go on the run when you just show your house to the police and allow them to come in to search? Then you're going to go on the run, so that makes no logical sense. So that leads you to think it's more to it than just the bond situation. You knew you were on bond, so you should have complied with whatever you needed to comply with. You had run-ins with the law 2 times, drug charges, weapon charges. You're too old for that. 40 years old to be going to jail for weapons and drug charges. Is he a user, Mr. Ware? Was she using drugs? Because that has been known to happen with people getting hooked up with people who are on substances. They ended up being offered the drugs, and then next thing you know, they're using. And by no ways am I implying that she's an addict, but just saying, if a person is using and they meet other people, they tend to offer people drugs. And next thing you know, a person is now using narcotics alongside the initiator. And possibly she was depressed, dealing with him, wanting him to change. But the point is, she still stayed. And that is the problem with dealing with manipulative, violent people. You have to know when to fold. You have to say to yourself, I'm better than this. I'm worthy. I'm valuable. And this person doesn't deserve any of my time and energy, money, affection, nothing. Because they're not going to change. And that's what we have to tell ourselves with dealing with toxic people, whether they are physically violent or not, violent with their tongue. They don't engage properly. They don't spend time with you. They don't know how to talk to you. Just leave them alone, please. This is Queen's personal message to you. When you are not getting what you need from a person, to your specifications, your liking, whichsoever, cut them off, please. Do yourself a favor. I've had to see for myself once again, going into the belly of the beast, that when bad things jump off, you have to take accountability in your part in the role that you played because you didn't bail out. And as I said, we're all human and make mistakes in dealing with people. But the reason why we keep having problems with individuals is because we don't know when to leave them alone. And then we're sick to our stomach when something jumps off because we knew better. And by no means does anybody deserve death or to be physically beat up or harmed in dealing with people. But when you see the signs that they're not right, you should know that anything can escalate. And there have been people who you didn't even see signs that they were violent, act violent, and then one day they changed, perhaps under the influence of something, alcohol, whatever, then another person emerges. I've come to see that as of recent. You don't know people. And what little you did know of them, it wasn't right. You should have left them alone. And that's my message to any of you out here. If you're dealing with somebody and it's not even violence, it's not working out. You can't meet up. You two can't jive. They're not respecting you. They're not giving you what you want, what you need. Just leave them alone. Don't call, don't text, don't visit. Just leave them be. Act like you never met them. As I said earlier in this live, for people who are coming in late, I spoke to Mr. Kevin Johnson, the father of Felicia Johnson, who is currently missing out of Houston, Texas, who went to a strip club to apply for a job, allegedly. I spoke to him for a few seconds this morning pertaining to doing a live interview with him on this network. He declined my invitation because he does not like what he is hearing and seeing about his daughter on YouTube. And I respect that. And I told him I respect his decision not to want to talk to me live because he is hearing a lot of rumors and I guess lies about his daughter. That is why I made the commentary at the beginning of this live that you have to be very careful with spreading misinformation about people because you're listening to gossip on Facebook and Snapchat, Twitter, whatever, however you're getting your information, YouTube, it's all the same. And then you spread that in the chat and on channels, but you don't know that it's factual. And that's why a lot of times I don't respond to he said, she said, when people say, well, did you hear? And I heard this about this. Well, that's the whole point of the story is that it's a rumor. Until somebody can authenticate the rumor, then that is what it is. And Mr. Johnson is not pleased with YouTube at the moment because he's hearing a lot of things. And I did see something that was very derogatory about his daughter last night when I was searching, trying to find him, to locate him, to speak to him. And I won't repeat what I heard because it is not nice. And I don't know if it's true or not. And that's the whole point. Sometimes we have to take our part in what we talk about on the channel to say, am I going to repeat this or not repeat this? So when I saw what was said, I thought, well, you know, how does this person even know if that's true or not to even say that? Whoever anonymously brought forth the information by email. So know that these people do have friends and family, children, parents. And when you speculate what happens, it can be offensive to family members and friends listening to the information. So I understand both sides of the coin. I understand that. And due to the fact of the type of job that she was looking for, you're going to get a lot of speculations. You're going to get a lot of innuendos because that's just what people do. And once people hear gossip about a person, especially something negative, they will run with it and spread it as if it's the spoken word when they don't even know the victim themselves. They don't know what's the truth. They don't know what's been reported is the truth. And as I've told you, even with the news is just getting a versions from outsiders. But they don't know what's the truth either. Because a lot of people like to judge the news, calling news agents fake news. Well, what do you want them to do? They have to go somewhere to try to get information to bring you the story. It doesn't mean that everything that they repeat is valid, because in the end, it is somebody's version. Just like when you go into a court of law and a person testifies, you are assuming that he or she is telling the truth of the events that they are speaking of. You weren't there, you don't know. The person who's defending him or herself, if they decide to speak, it is up to you to decide if you believe he or she is telling the truth. It once again, his or her version. If the lawyer speaks on his or her behalf and the person doesn't testify, it is still the same. His or her version. That is all you are worth, is your word. You have really no value except for your word. what you tell to the public, if it's the truth or not. And that's the gist of the story. Prayers for Miss Taylor's family, because she's now deemed deceased. So prayers that the truth will be revealed. But did she die by the hands of Mr. Kevin Ware Jr.? Was there an altercation that led to her death? Did he bury her? And if so, why did he kill her, for one? Two, bury her? What led them to find her remains, where they said they were found in North Harris County? Where's this location? And how did the law officials come to that location to find her? I'm sure we will get more information due to the fact that as of Friday, her remains have been positively identified as her remains. What happened between she and Mr. Ware? Is he the culprit behind her being buried? And if he did indeed hurt her, harm her, kill her, why? He saw it wasn't working, perhaps. Why didn't he leave? Hey, this is not working. I don't want you here. If indeed that was his home. Same thing for her. Why did she continue to stay in a relationship that was not working? Did people tell her, hey, we're seeing signs, you're not right, you're changing, your attitude's changing, your physical appearance is changing. Why are you staying with him? He's no good, blah, blah, blah. Why did she remain? Why does anybody remain? That's a question for all of us to answer. Why do we continue to deal with toxic people that mean us no good? We see that they refuse to change, adhere to obeying the rules and regulations and the laws of the world, want to be ride or die fans to do wrong. And that's just something I've learned. There's just some people just don't care. And that's what Crystal said to me. Was it yesterday, I believe, early morning? That there's just some people, they're never going to change. There's nothing you can do or say that's going to make him or her change. They're going to continue to do wrong. They're going to continue to be hateful, spiteful, always stirring up drama every 5 seconds of the day. They're just bitter, miserable beings. And the thing you have to understand about being in the company of people like this, they will drag you down into the mud. And you better pray you can climb your way out, because many people have left here, such as Taylor, because they were fooling with the wrong human being, machine. And many people are in the cemetery now because of dirty, nasty machines. Well, we'll pray for you, Jenny. Because trust me, Queen is going through something herself. You have got to know when to leave people alone. Just don't tolerate it. Tell yourself, I'm worthy, I'm valuable, I am important, I deserve better, and I will get better. I will find better. I don't need this aggravation, plural, in my life. And I will not be a party to any aggravating factors by either man, woman, or child. Because there comes a point when you have to let people know that you will not be a willing participant in the bull. Thank you, sweetie. And that's my message to all of you, is that no matter what you're going through, know that there is a way out. You have to pray about it if you believe in God. And I believe the reason why a lot of people suffer so in the world is because they're not believers. They're not Christians. They don't believe in God. They don't have anything to focus on. They have given up on the world. And I have come to see that with somebody recently, that they're just bitter and miserable, and there is nothing you can do for him or her. You're wasting your time talking to them. You're wasting your time dealing with them. They will suck you down dry till there's nothing left of you but bone. No flesh. So why succumb to that when you don't have to? You don't have to be a party to the nonsense. If a person wants to continue to live in a miserable state of being, then you let them have that. But you let them know, I will not go down in flames with you. I will not ride with you to the death. You're on your own. And unfortunately, that is what probably happened with Taylor. She continued to deal with a violent machine, and it cost her her life. Prayers to Taylor's family. And any woman, child, man too, in a domesticated situation, please walk away. And if you can't walk, then run. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to give an explanation, because we don't really know what happened with Mr. Ware and Taylor on the 26th of April of last year. And I pray that she wasn't arguing with him, because that is the most violent time to get dead, is to argue with the perpetrator. Never tell a perpetrator anything negative, never threaten them, and never threaten to leave. Just nod your head and try to play it cool if you can. Because as you get elevated and they're elevated, that is usually when blows come to head. And now you're fighting for your life against a bigger person, or let's say stronger person. And you don't want that. This is terrible news. And I feel sorry for her family to now have confirmation that she is deceased. Now they're going to have to now assess, how did she get to where she was? And is Mr. Ware, Kevin Ware Jr., is he the culprit that buried the child? It's sad. And as I had spoken to you all before about talking about violent people to others, please don't do that. Because as I brought you information on my community page about a woman writing notes about her violent husband, she had children with him, it is sickening to read the notes of a late human being, that they feared for their safety, was afraid to go to sleep in the same bed with their husband. Now those words will probably be read in a court of law to 12 members of a jury, that the woman feared for her safety and continued to lie beside a violent man, a man who wouldn't work, a man who wouldn't pull his weight as a husband, a partner, a father. Because I believe this trial has already commenced. The man was crying in court, excuse me. But that's the point. It's after the fact. And that's the thing I try to tell you all, is that you can't go back. So if you can do something now while you're living, then do it. Don't write stuff in journals and text messages to people that he did this, she did this. Run. Run. Say, I'm important, I'm valuable, I'm worthy. Don't leave behind diaries that somebody's hurting you, harming you. Because as I said, what good is it if you are missing and or dead? Do something while you are living. Preservation of life. Preserve yourself. Don't write stuff in journals and all of that when you can just get up day one when you see, okay, he hit me. He cursing at me, cursed me, calling me nasty names. I'm better than this. Because even with the name calling, the person has a propensity now to call you out again. Do you really want to be living with someone that name calls? I want you to think about that. Maybe they never called you names before. Maybe they started out calling you names. I don't know. Everybody's situation is different. But the point is, once you see a person has a propensity of something, physical, verbal, lying, they will do it again. Because really that's all you're doing, is rolling the dice to wait on the next time. They get mad, they get angry. You're every SO son of us, you know what I'm saying? Whether they started out doing it, did it down the road, did it for the first time, you know the game now. Okay, first time for everything. Well, you should know there'll be a second time. So don't make it a second time. That's my message to all of you. We don't need a third and fourth time anymore. Thank you, Diane. No more 3 times, no more 4 times, no more 6, 7 times of anything negative by another human being. Time number 2, run like hell. And frankly, we need to start running at time number 1. How about that? Because one punch should never make it to time number 2. Dirty names, time number 1. There should never be a time number 2. Because you can't change people. Stomp, plead, cry, fall out, beg. But you can't change people. That's something they have to do on their own. Prayers for Taylor, to Taylor's family. Prayers to Felicia Johnson, missing out of Houston, Texas as well. Prayers to Mr. Kevin Johnson family. As I said in my live, he refused to do an interview with the Queen because he doesn't like what he's seeing and hearing on YouTube. And I understand that is his preference. That's why I want to make sure that anything I bring forward is not in the rumor mill pertaining to any of these missing people or decedent people, because it's easy to speculate. But as I said, people can't get offended by things that you say if it's not true. So I want to make sure that I try to be respectful in the things I've said about these missing women and deceased women on this network and other people in general. And I have repeated things that I have heard about people in my commentary. But in the end, you're entitled to your interpretation of the information by the news sources, people who've come forward to bring information about a person. You're entitled to your opinion. I'm going to leave it here. I will be back on in a few minutes. I'm going to dissect what is going on in my neck of the woods, unfortunately. And most of you know I don't really care to talk about these people anymore out of Rogersville, Tennessee, because I don't get anything out of it. I'm just at a point where it means nothing to me. And it has nothing to do with the disappearance of Summer Wells. It has nothing to do with the child. It is pertaining to everything else that has latched itself on to the storyline. But I'm going to delve into a statement made by the Hawkins County Humane Society. I'm going to read you that statement. I'm also going to possibly talk about Boy H. I would like to discuss some things pertaining to him that I had saw in the queue last week, that he has returned home. Where is that going to lead this child? Because in the end, he is still a child. And a lot of people don't want to accept that, because this goes back into what Mr. Johnson was saying about his child. You all listen at rumors and believe everything that you hear, and you spread it as if you know it's the truth when you don't know what's the truth about a story. And yes, we cannot continue to keep spreading lies about people. When we weren't there, we don't know the people. We don't know what they were doing and not doing, who did what, who said what. And this is the reason why YouTube has no credibility, because you're listening to 50,000 different people talk about a story as if they know it's the truth, and they don't. They weren't even there. They weren't even there. I want to thank you all for joining me. Join me back here in a few minutes to pertaining to the Hawkins County Humane Society, the allegations against the current dweller at 110 Ben Circle Way pertaining to the animals. And I want to talk about Boy H as well, and where this case is going now, going into the month of May. Next month will mark an entire year that Summer Wells went missing out of Rogersville, Tennessee. Thank you for joining me. This is Everyday Shenanigans. If you'd like to donate to the channel, $Big Angie 129 Cash App. All super chats are welcome during my lives. Thank you all. God bless all of you. Thank you.